It's time for Recipe of the Day. This is seriously the easiest spaghetti and meatballs recipe that you can make if you're not using like store-bought frozen meatballs, which are of course a great thing and you can use them in this recipe, no problem. I often have a bag of those in the freezer. We either just like put some cheese on them for a snack. Sometimes I even thaw them and slice them up and use them to make like quick quesadillas, that kind of thing. So frozen meatballs from the store are great, but if you want to make your own meatballs and still have a quick spaghetti and meatball dinner, this is how you do it. And I can tell you, as a busy single mom, this is the recipe that I've turned to over and over again because it is really, really low stress, comes together fast, and everyone actually eats it. Super easy, super delicious. Here's what you do. You are going to start by getting your water boiling for your spaghetti. So get a large pot, fill it with water, add some salt, put the lid on, and bring it to a boil over high heat. While that is coming to a boil, in a large bowl, you are mixing together half a pound of ground beef and half a pound of Italian sausage meat. What is that? That is often labeled bulk Italian sausage meat. It's basically pork with a bit of a binder and some seasonings in it. This is essentially what is used to make Italian sausages, but it's not in the casings yet. And you can often just buy that in packages. You want the Italian, not the breakfast sausage. Don't buy the breakfast sausage meat. That's not going to be good here. Now, if you can't get the bulk sausage meat or if you already have sausages, no problem. You can just cut the casings off of those. And then I honestly actually often just make meatballs from that. Take the casings off, cut each sausage into 3 or 4 pieces, roll them and cook them like meatballs. You have got that there. But the alternative is you can mix that sausage meat from the casings with the ground beef, and that's going to work out just fine. Now, alternatively, you can use ground pork for the half pound of Italian sausage meat, or you can use ground beef. So then you'd have a full pound of ground beef in these meatballs. If you're doing a full pound of ground beef, I recommend you use a higher fat content beef, either an 80-20 or an 85-15, just because lean ground beef and meatballs can be quite dry. And I'm going to say that if you're using all ground beef or if you're using ground beef with pork meat, ground pork, and no Italian sausage, you need to increase the seasonings because you're not getting that easy seasoning straight from the Italian sausage. You have to add some in. So then you would add in an extra half teaspoon of salt, a half teaspoon of garlic powder, a half teaspoon of Italian seasoning, and if you have it, a pinch of crushed fennel seed. Fennel seed is really what makes Italian sausage taste so good, in my opinion. If you have it, add it. Okay, so then assuming though they're using the half pound of ground beef and the half pound of Italian sausage meat, you are just going to add a half teaspoon of salt to that and then mix it with your hands only just until it's combined, being careful not to overmix. Then you're going to shape it into 16 golf ball sized meatballs. What I often do to just make this sort of even and easy is take the whole mixture that's in the bowl, flatten it down in the bowl, divide it into 4, and then each quarter divide in half, and then you know that you need 2 meatballs from each of those halves, and they're going to be approximately the same size as all of each other, okay? Now you have 16 meatballs, and I'm just going to tell you that at the end of this episode, I'm going to tell you what to do if you want to make twice as many and save half of them for another meal. So you're kind of like meal prepping while you make dinner today. I'll tell you how to do that later. So right now you just have 16 meatballs. You're going to heat a large skillet over medium-high heat, and you add the meatballs there, and you cook until they're browned underneath about 3 minutes, then flip them and brown the other side. At that point, you're adding a jar of marinara sauce. You want 24 ounces, and you pour that over the meatballs, and it's still over medium heat, so you're just gonna stir pretty often until it comes up to a simmer, then reduce the heat down to low and cook at a low simmer, stirring every now and then just until the meatballs aren't pink inside. It's gonna be 4 or 5 minutes. Now, at that point, you turn off the heat and put the lid on the skillet just to keep them warm. I'm just going to back up a little bit though and say that when you start simmering the meatballs in the sauce, that is when you add the spaghetti into the water. So the order is you bring the pot of water up to a boil. While it's coming up to a boil, that's when you make your meatball mixture and shape it. Heat your skillet, cook those meatballs. Once you add that marinara sauce and start bringing it up to a simmer, that's when you can put the spaghetti into your boiling water, cook it according to the package directions. If it's not done by the time that your meatballs are cooked through, that's fine because you're putting the lid on the skillet with the meatballs and taking it off the heat heat. They're going to stay warm and perfect. Then you drain your pasta, divide the spaghetti among plates, and top it with your meatballs and sauce. If you have some Parmesan cheese, that is great, grated over top. So you see, that's really easy and it comes together really quickly. I can make this in 20 minutes. You might not be able to the first couple times you make it, but once you've done it a few times, it's just like boom and done. Now, I promised you that I would tell you how to meal prep a second dinner from this. So you can actually freeze cooked spaghetti. So if you want, you can cook a double batch of spaghetti, drain it, and then the half that you're not eating right then, put in a pot with cold water, just set it aside and it's going to chill. And then you drain that and freeze it like after dinner. Just let it sit in the cold water while you're eating and then drain it and put it in a zip top bag into the freezer. It's good for a month in there. Then you want your meatballs. So you're going to do a double batch of the meatballs, but you really don't want to freeze meatballs in sauce. And you really do want the meatballs to be fully cooked if you're going to be freezing them. So you're going to cook half the meatballs in the skillet, like I said, with the marinara sauce. The other half of them, you can cook in the air fryer or in the oven. Just put them on a pan into the oven, put them in the air fryer. I'm going to send you links to how to do that so that you can get the timing on those. But they're just hands-off cooking over there while you're making the rest of dinner. Then you cool them and freeze them on a tray so they're individually frozen, like on parchment paper, or put them into a zip top bag, but kind of lay the bag flat and space them out. You don't want them freezing into a clump. Okay, so then you have your spaghetti in the freezer and you have a batch of meatballs in the freezer when you want to make an even quicker spaghetti and meatball dinner. What you do is bring a kettle of water to the boil and put the spaghetti noodles in a big bowl. Then in a pot, you're going to put your marinara sauce and your frozen meatballs. Put a lid on there, bring it up to a simmer over medium-high heat, stir it every now and then you're just cooking until they're heated through because you already fully cooked these meatballs. Once the meatballs are thawed and cooked through, pour some boiling water over your spaghetti in that bowl, let it thaw and heat through, drain that, and you've got dinner in like 10 minutes. So really, really easy way to kind of like cook once but have two dinners. I will put the link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is January 20th of 2025. I am Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all-new chicken cookbook, cookfor2.us, and from this podcast, recipe of the day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.